Yeah.
Me too.
Really close to
Mhm.
that location too. So.
And just make sure to turn on your mic, sorry.
We just made a public.
No public.
Well, I think you're okay.
Good. We're going to go ahead and open up this special meeting today for our workshop that we are having that will begin at about 11 o'clock. We want to invite anyone who has public comments about today's session to go ahead and let us know. I don't see anyone with a blue card or a card, whatever color they are now. So we'll go ahead and close that and go on and wait for item number 3, which is the Texas Presidents and Trustees Collaborative Virtual Workshop, and we'll be back at 11 o'clock. Or people can just sit and watch us eat, I guess.
It's such a great opportunity to spend some time with you today. For those of you who I have not met, my name is Dr. Kimberly Lowry, and I have the pleasure and honor of serving as the Vice President of the Texas Association of Community Colleges and the Executive Director of the Texas Success Center. On behalf of our CEO, Mr. Ray Martinez, and all of our team members with TAC Success Center, we just want to not just welcome you, but just thank you for your commitment. This opportunity with the Aspen Fellowship to think about student success and presidents and trustees as a collaborative is a critical part of our
Recording in
ecosystem.
progress.
Over the course, we know that you have looked at data, you've had conversations, you've thought about sustainability, and we are just very proud that you all have committed to the conversations, the actions that you're going to take back at your campus, and look forward to continuing the conversation even beyond this session. So just thank you all. We appreciate the time and engagement and look forward to your continued contribution to student success across our state. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Leanne to get started for the day.
Thanks,
Great.
Kim. And Josh, over to you.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Kim, for the partnership, and thank you to everybody for being here. Just as a reminder of why we're here, what we know from excellent colleges, colleges that achieve high and improving levels of student success, is that boards and presidents are working together in sustained ways to make that happen. And that's really why you're here. You're here because you're all committed to making sure that more students learn and graduate, and that what they learn and graduate gives them better lives, gives them a better prospect for a good job, for transferring and getting a bachelor's degree along the way in many cases. And we're really delighted to be partnering with Ascendium, who is the funder of this work. If any of you are getting grants from Ascendium or see anybody from Ascendium, please do thank them on your behalf as well as ours for their partnership on this. So the goal today, to continue to strengthen your partnership, and this is the last of the 3 sessions, is really to identify the elements of the framework that you've presented. And Pascal's going to lead us through a reminder of some of the things that we've done. And really ask yourself the question, what are you going to do with this information? How are you going to sustain this work beyond the fellowship? How are you going to commit? What are the commitments you're going to make to take the information that you've gotten, how you've applied it to your context, to ensure that the board and president together continue to advance student success? And then we're going to introduce a little bit of new content that relates to the board-president relationship. We've talked a lot about the why and what of reform, and we've talked about policy and budget, and we've talked about the data that you look at. But all of that is fundamentally rooted in how you communicate with one another. And how you communicate and the culture you build between the president and the board are artifacts of structures and commitments that you make. And we're going to talk a little bit about what do those structures and commitments look like? What does it look like to intentionally build that relationship? Not for just getting along for kumbaya reasons, right? But this is getting along so that you all can advance student success together. So those are the 2 goals for today. Review everything you've done, make some commitments about what you want to do differently, and really think about your relationship with one another. So to enable us to do that, we have an agenda here today where after the welcome that we're doing now, you'll reflect a little bit. Pascal will review a little bit about what it is we went over in January, and you'll talk a little bit about that. And then she'll present the content on the role of CEOs and trustees in sustaining reforms. You're then going to go into 2 different breakout sessions. One is at 11:10, I think it was on the prior slide. I think that's what I recall. And one of them will be at 1 o'clock. One of them will be about each of the 2 topics that Pascal's covering, right? One is the bringing it all together, making commitments. What are you going to do next with everything you've learned? And the other one is going to be about sustaining the reforms through the relationship between the board and the CEO. And your facilitators have documents. Leanne will share with you a little bit what materials you have. But now, here's the key. Pay attention now, because we're going to tell you who's in track A and who's in track B. In one of them, you have a facilitator, and in the other one, the president's going to be facilitating. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So these are the facilitators. We can go back one. I'm sorry, I should have done this first. So we've got a terrific group of people sitting, and former college presidents, and me, who's done a little bit of work with community colleges over the years. Pascal Charlot, our managing director, Brenda Kays, who's a senior advisor and coach at the Texas Success Center and a very successful president herself in Texas. Maria Harper Marinick, who's a senior fellow and was the chancellor in Maricopa. Hope Rivers, who's the current president of Piedmont Technical College. Mary Rittling, another former college president, a Texas Pathways coach, as is Maria, has been a Texas Pathways coach and an Aspen Senior Fellow, and then myself. So these are your facilitators. Now, this is the thing you got to remember. You don't have to remember who your facilitators are. They'll just show up in your room. You do need to remember what track you're on. So in track A, which is the first session, these are the colleges that will, I'm sorry, track A colleges are on the left and track B colleges are in the right. Whether you're track A or B, you're going to be doing both sessions, but you'll do them in different orders. So just try to remember which track you're on. Let's go back 2 slides if we could. One more slide, I'm sorry. So I'm sorry, go forward. It's all my fault. So here you'll see track A colleges will start with the sustaining reforms and then move at 1 o'clock to bringing it all together. And the inverse is true for track B colleges. All right. So I think I've done my part. I'm going to turn it to Leanne to share with you a little bit about technical support and logistics, and then we'll hand it over to Pascal to get us started. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. So if at any point today you encounter technical difficulties, we are here to support you. There is a number on the screen, that 434-401-7626 for assistance. We'll also drop that in the chat for you. And this is also available in your participant toolkit. And my colleague Allison will drop a copy of the toolkit into the chat. For those of you that are joining remotely, you can download this to your desktop. We also sent a copy of this to your email. This participant toolkit also has your workshop tracks, and so if you need to check back and reference it, you have the ability to do so. One other thing to note, if you would like to rename yourself, including the college that you are part of, that will be helpful for us as we move you into breakout rooms later this afternoon. So in order to do this, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a button that says Participants. Click that and find your name. Then next to your name, there will be 3 dots. You can click those 3 dots and rename yourself. This will help us get you in the proper breakout room and make sure that you are with your college. And with that, I will hand it over to our Managing Director, Pascal Charlot, to get us started. Pascal, over to you.
Thank you, Leanne, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're located. We're really excited about today's conversation because it really slaps a bow on everything we've been talking about, but not only a bow for beautiful and aesthetic reasons, but a bow to ensure that we are grounding the work in ways that are sustainable. The essence of this conversation has been about driving and leading sustainable change. And that means that we are talking about the long game. And so in January, we looked at how do you institutionalize and sustain this work? And it required an understanding of the kind of investments the board would be willing to make. Next slide. These investments included sustaining and institutionalizing the work. So we talked about how do you invest focused time, looking specifically at your meeting agendas and what you're prioritizing and how you're spending time aligned to student success reform. We talked about structure through the role of policy and ensuring that the institution is grounded and really understand what the board values in order to get to scalable and sustainable change. And then we talked about the one key factor that can make or break the entire reform, which is where are you investing your financial resources? How are you making the right decisions to ensure that adequate funding and adequate personnel and adequate spaces are all being provided in order to advance what often is a new stream of work? Then you had the opportunity to practice this discipline, this muscle of retaining focus. You looked at your agendas for your board meetings and made some decisions about how you wanted to spend your time. I recall conversations about what will move to the consent agenda and some real understanding that you needed to clear mental space, but also actual time to have these conversations. And you also engaged in an effort to identify a reform that would need your support and started to ask questions about the kind of financial support and policy or resolutions that you could introduce in order to advance the work. So let's look at this more closely just to remind you of what we actually did. Moving to the next slide. And you may recall this four-part framework that we hope will stay with you once we complete this work. The why and the what grounds everything that we do. And in fact, it will come back into play when we talk about the CEO and president and board relationship shortly in this conversation. But this why and what has to be inescapable. Every board member needs to fully understand why reform is needed and what strategies the institution will be prioritizing in order to advance the goals that will help you to achieve that reform. Then we had a conversation about the leading and lagging indicators, those metrics that are going to signal to you that you're moving in the right direction as it relates to advancing this work. And we agreed that we would focus on a limited number, a prioritized set of metrics that all board members would understand and be able to track in the progress of this work. As mentioned in January, we then introduce your role in sustaining this effort. Again, it's the long game. So there's going to be some structural decisions that have to be put in place in order to sustain the progress so that you can ultimately achieve those goals. And the reality is this is the first wave of reform. There will be more reforms, right? So to the extent that you make decisions to institutionalize practices that will support this work, you can continue to build on them as you advance student success at scale in evolving ways over time. And then later today, we'll talk more about the sustainability of this effort through the role of the CEO, right? The first three buckets have really focused on the board getting up to speed in all the ways the CEO is driving this work, but the work continues through the role of the CEO. And there are two lenses to that piece of it. It's your current CEO, and it's also CEOs in the future, because you can anticipate, especially as you think about expanding opportunity for your communities, that it will always be an aspiration that will inform the kind of leadership that you're expecting at the institution. So let's do a quick refresher on the work we did last time, and then we'll open it up for discussion because we'd love to hear what progress you've made to date. So just as a reminder, the two key levers that the board is well positioned to own and to advance are related to policies that you would adopt in order to support the institution in particular to advance these reforms. And these policies are aligned with the goals and the metrics based on your understanding of the why and the what, right? So you can start to see these pieces come together. And then the budget investment is the allocation of resources, sometimes the reallocation of resources in ways that signal what matters to you as the board, right? And so the institution is always looking for what matters in your prioritization, and the funding resource conversation is a key indicator of where the institution is headed forward. Next slide. So if we look specifically at the policies and a component, we know we talked last time about policies that affect student success. I believe we may have discussed the Alamo example in terms of introducing advising, but this notion that once we understand what we're aiming for and we recognize the strategies that we need to get there, we may discover the college is not structured in ways that would support those strategies. So these kinds of policies that are aligned to student success not only provide guidance, but can accelerate the adoption of those strategies within the institution. Having you as the board be able to commit, especially in board meetings and other public facing comments, not only allows the internal community to see the level of commitment, but also the external community. And as you can imagine, when we think about reimagining transfer partnerships, how valuable it is for those institutions to see the level of investment and commitment for the board. So if you can imagine you're trying to grow a transfer partnership, but you've had some challenges with advising to get students to that transfer partner, having your partners see the board's commitment reinforces the strategies the CEO is introducing with that partnership in order to grow that pipeline for the community. And then lastly, again, being able to signal where the prioritization will lie within institutions that are often navigating competing considerations is very well supported by your visible commitment to this work. Next slide. When we introduce the student success policies, we're talking about transformational policies. So we're not talking about the endorsement of metrics or just compliance statements or even revisions to policies that have absolutely nothing to do with your institutional context. No, these are commitments that are public facing, very, very clear so that they can be understood throughout the institution. Because remember, oftentimes when we're aiming for scalable and sustainable change, we're trying to break the silos of the organization that hasn't historically worked together in this way. And so this kind of clear guidance is very, very helpful for the institution to speak the same language, and it will reinforce the internal communication strategies happening horizontally across the organization, as well as vertically throughout the teams. And it also allows for the scaling, right? When we think about improving student success for all students and at a very large scale, this kind of guidance allows us to introduce the kind of systemic change to meet that challenge. Next slide. And similarly with the budget, there's a real commitment to recognizing what the implications of introducing these kinds of strategies will be for not only the sort of institutional structure, but for the people involved, right? And so we think about the role of the CEO to prepare the board to expect who might not be too thrilled about what will happen to resources or some of the changes coming down the pipe. You know, we consider them winners and losers at times, but there could be real implications for the institution. It's important for the CEO to prepare the board for that kind of impact in order to develop strategies so that the community understands the implications for these decisions, the why and the what, but also to ensure that we don't derail our focus from what's really important and what we're trying to achieve through these strategies. And so you will see efforts along these lines to also provide communication support and really recommendations for the budget adoptions so that we continue to inform the community while we're maintaining the forward momentum on these initiatives. And so with that, we're going to transition to the next slide. And really, let's take down well, you can see the questions on the slide, which I will ask all of you because we want to bring you into the conversation. And you've been with us now for 2 other sessions, so we know we want to hear
Recording
what progress
stopped.
you've made since our last conversation regarding the policy and board front. Have you been able to make some changes to your board time in order to introduce conversations aligned to student success? And if there are any more open-ended observations that you have regarding your progress, we'd love to hear that as well. And so, Leanne, if you could take down the slides so that we can see our Texas friends. I just see me. I don't like that.
I've
Any
got you, Pascal.
Okay, thanks, Leanne. Any feedback or reflections from any of our Texas colleagues? Thank you. This is great.
I can give some feedback, I suppose. So this is Clint Kingsbury, chairman of the Alamo College's board. We've actually been very intentional in moving in this direction of Community College 3.0. Some of the changes that we've implemented currently, we've begun introducing this idea of looking at programs and their financial sustainability for the outcomes for our students, right? And while we haven't gone all in yet on that because we don't want to just throw everything into a tizzy, we have started introducing this idea and getting the board members on board with this change and kind of helping kind of get their minds in that direction. So we've been stair-stepping it essentially over the past few board meetings and kind of introducing this idea, what this change may look like, budgetary implications, that sort of thing. And then in the document that we utilize in terms of kind of directing the Alamo colleges from the board perspective, which we call the charges to the chancellor, We have implemented the Community College 3.0 language within that document as well to both guide the institution in this direction, but also give the chancellor a tool to use while he's going out and talking to faculty, staff, and everyone else about the coming changes. So we've been trying to be proactive on this and get ahead of it because we see a lot of potential here in the long run for our community.
Clint, thank you so much for sharing. In many ways, you've just demonstrated the curriculum, right? So I'm going to play back what I believe I heard, and you let me know if I misstep in the recapture of your reflections. As you are Alamo is at another stage of reform, right? And as you think about building on previous reforms, and we've talked about the advising reform that you all have led, you have mentioned the need to introduce the why and the what for this reform that is aligned to your larger student success agenda. So you have a broader agenda. This is the next level of strategy as it relates to programs of value. And what I heard you to share is that you are walking the introduction and the why and the what so that your board can move at a pace that's consistent with their learning. In addition, what I will also, oh, come on and jump in, Clint. Okay, the other piece that I heard is you're mentioning some real intentional communication strategies internally for the board, but externally for the president as well, as he is moving in pace with the board because the work continues. And so you're moving with some real care because you understand there will be consequences to the introduction of your program mix and how the board moves at a pace that is realistic for the board in parallel with the work the president needs to do is happening in tandem in order to advance this reform. Is that a fair summary?
No, that's accurate. Yeah, we kind of see it as like a 4 to 5 month rollout, essentially. Part of it is a bit political because we have elections in May, right? But but we do want to give the board that chance to really absorb and understand what these changes mean for the institution and then for our community as a whole. And it does give Dr. Flores the time that he needs to start laying the groundwork within the institution itself. So it's, it's a double-pronged approach. We have to get the board on board, but also get the institution moving in that direction.
And Clint, to your point, we cannot ignore the political realities we're living in. And so to the extent that is in the background, depending on one's context, it is certainly something to be taken into consideration. So really appreciate that reflection, Clint. Other thoughts or questions, even for Clint?
If I could also just kind of touch on, this is Gerald Lopez with Alamo Colleges as well. I just wanted to kind of just touch on what Clint mentioned. I think for us as trustees, when we look at these type programs, some of us individual trustees are passionate about some of the programs. So that faces a challenge as well. So I just wanted to make sure that we mentioned that as well, that they will come across those type of those individual trustees that are passionate about programs when we start gearing up to when it comes to having to scale down or I'm not sure the word to use, but having to look at those programs long term. So just wanted to add to what Clint was saying to that. So
I really appreciate that. And I hope all of you don't mind if I call you all by your first names. Just assume that trustee is the word before the name that I will say. And Gerald, I appreciate your reflection because later on we'll be talking about the importance of one-on-one conversations for the CEO to have with board members to get a deeper understanding of what each board member cares about, and also making a connection between what the board member cares about and the larger student success reform agenda. So to your point, Gerald, so that it's not lost, but that it doesn't distract the larger conversation around what's best for our students.
right, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Other thoughts?
This is Tex with Clarendon College. I'm the CEO, but I've been nominated or voluntold to speak. We have modified our agendas and spent considerable time now focusing more on student success, and to that end, now an hour before each board meeting, we have a student group that comes in and meets with the board. It's over a meal, and there's not any business discussed, but I think that's really tied the students have appreciated, and I think the board has heard more more success about things that the college has done or is helping them do, or possibly could need to improve upon. We focus more on student priorities, particularly such as the, I mean, give you an example, the Trellis Foundation and their student insecurities, food insecurities. Recently got that data and we shared that with the board, and I think that's going to dictate some budget reallocations for next year's budget.
So I appreciate the fact that you've been voluntold. That's another interpretation for your relationship. There's a partnership there of some sort. But what I hear you're sharing is that Clarendon College is on a learning journey. And actually later I'll be talking about making sure you're spending time to do a deeper dive in understanding particular aspects of the reform agenda, so that over time, when you start to have sort of shorthand language for what are very complex and very rich discussions, you have a real appreciation for the context that's informing some of these shorthand decisions. And so when Clarendon is talking about gathering student success data, in many ways, you're kind of doing focus groups and you're inquiring about your agenda, whether it's affirming your hypothesis about where you're aiming or you're trying to discover if you're aiming in the right direction. That's a strategy to allocate time to ensure all board members are very clear about your student success agenda. So your point is well taken. Thank you. Any other bits of feedback?
And we have our trustees here, and our trustees have been very supportive of the Playbook 3.0 as well. And a lot of good outcomes have been experienced as a result of the last meeting as well. It was indicated that we should focus on those programs that will allow our students also to earn a livable wage above the poverty level. So we've identified that data and we're providing that information to the trustees. Student success outcomes, obviously, that's been very important and high on the list of discussion points at the board meetings. And one of the things that we're very proud of is that we're getting ready to implement the Navigate EduCost 360, which is really going to be instrumental in helping us to follow our students' long-term success and for them to be in connection with us as well. So with that, it's going to really make a difference with our touch points with our students to get the immediate feedback that they seek, and for us also to be able to make sure that our students are on the schedule for not just enrollment, but for completion as well. And so our board members recently approved that also. But there was one additional piece that we think is really very important, is that we're looking at the alignment of all of our programs and the inclusion of both faculty advising of our students in addition to the advisors advising our students as well. And so that intentionality really, in our estimation, is going to make a big difference.
Thank you so much for sharing, because what you're describing is evidence of the kind of strategic thinking that we are inviting you to introduce into your board conversations that's leading to decisions very much aligned with advancing your agenda. And so it is obvious from your reflections that there has been a discipline in these conversations to get to this point. And you have other decisions to make, but it sounds as if the decisions are coming from an informed place where board members are able to participate and align behind the direction that you are aiming for to get to scalable change. And so thank you all. Oh, is there one more? I see someone coming off mute before we transition. Was there one more person?
Yes,
Go ahead.
yes.
This is,
Jonette?
yeah, I'll just say
Thank you.
something quickly. One
Okay.
of the things that we've done is last fall, we had a retreat with Dr. Martha Ellis, and it kind of mirrored all of the things that we talk about here. And I think it's helped us to really be focused on the goals of this experience. I mean, we talked about the completion of programs, return on mission, But one of the outcomes was that the board challenged us to make sure rather than that we give reports on an ad hoc basis, we now have a schedule for the year of what reports that the board can expect. And so I think that's been one positive outcome.
You know, it can sound like a small thing, but that level of clarity can bring so much focus to the conversation. And so thank you so much for even just sharing the idea of a timeline for reporting in this kind of conversation is extremely valuable.
Pascal, this is Melissa Skipworth at College of the Mainland. I know Helen's probably going, eek, why are you off mute? I think, educating and communicating with our board has been our focus. We've added a workshop before each meeting to really discuss some of these outside factors outside our traditional agenda, and then incorporating more detail into the agenda just to educate our trustees before we get into that topic. And a lot of it also focusing on that livable wage programs, really tasking Dr. Brewer with building some more relationship building ideas with our industries in the area, with our ISDs. And so that's kind of where we're focusing. But even looking at the livable wage, looking at the programs that we have, there might be programs that are a step that might not be a livable wage. So we want to keep that in mind. So it's just educating, again, the trustees, the board, on bringing those programs forth and presenting them in those workshops to discuss them as well. So a lot of it has really been education right now. And we're also looking at incorporating another committee within our board structure to form, just because of the new legislation coming at us, a lot of information out of Austin, to have a group of trustees also get ahead of that as well.
Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate that. And it's also, your focus on education, I think, is extremely helpful. And given that I'm working with your college, just for the benefit of the cause, it's in many ways a board that has new members, a new incoming chair. And so when Melissa is talking about education, she's really leaning into that first box and the why and the what in a way that manages all the transitions happening within the board. And so the life cycle of the board itself can inform how one enters these conversations. Given Clint's Amarillo board, which is a bit more mature as compared to Melissa's board, which is still in its developing stages, you can hear the different approaches, but still with the same aims. Having said that, let's transition now to the final component of our agenda, which will set us up for the group discussions shortly. And so now we're going to talk about the role of the CEO.
Recording in progress.
As we think about sustaining the reforms. And I want you to hear this conversation through two lenses, which is the current CEO that you have. There's a component tied to evaluations and maintaining the momentum. And then what happens next? At some point, your CEO will transition out. And this is not a conversation to suggest that you not keep them. That's not what we're talking about here. In fact, they were smart enough to be part of this collaborative. Rather, it's about how do you center the institution? If you've done all the work in the first three boxes to understand the institution, the why and the what of the reforms, to establish your vision for the community and how these reforms are going to get you there with those strategies. You've created the infrastructure. You sustained the momentum with the policies and the budgets. You want to bring a president on board who's going to continue to advance this work, right? And it's so important that you're doing this work now before you find yourself in a situation where you're in the midst of the search and trying to figure out, because you can imagine what the conversation would be like if you don't have an understanding of boxes 1 through 3, and you go straight to the conversation about the kind of candidate that you would like to hire. So our recommendation is to save that conversation for last, but ensure you understand your context well enough in order to make the smart decision. That starts with how you work with your current CEO and how you start to build that foundation. So let's go to the next slide. We're going to start talking with the traits of what does this relationship look like in a way that's aligned to student success. And when we say the traits for highly effective, we define effective as being grounded in the sustained improvements for post-completion student success. And as Josh introduced the conversation, that's related to a better life. And for our students, it's a good job, either immediately after graduating or completing a credential at our institutions, or a good job after transferring out and earning a bachelor's degree. Do you share a vision with your CEO for how to get there, right? And that's a big part of what we've been doing in this work together. And are you very clear about the big moves? That's the first box where I talked about it being inescapable for all the members of the board. Because as you can see, that understanding is not only relevant for developing and sustaining the reforms, it's important for the role of the CEO and how you will hold that CEO accountable. And when it's time to hire, how you will identify the right talent for the institution. It also informs how you spend your time to further those goals, right? As you can tell, even from the reflections, whether it's Melissa's reflection or Clint's reflection, or even Gerald's comments, like you can see it takes time in order to get your arms around all the different variables. And that time is time that some of you are allocating before the meeting, whether it's through bringing students in to have conversations or the workshops that you're holding. But you recognize there's some amount of time you have to dedicate to building that understanding. It also means that when you're making decisions, you're juggling the administrative responsibilities you have, right? Some things are just simply compliance. They have to get done, but you have to make space for these other conversations that you're learning that are emerging through this work. And do you have the right mix of time allocated in order to advance that work? And then, of course, it's the one-on-one time. You know, to the extent there are particular areas that are of interest to board members, or there's particular expertise, the CEO and each member should be spending quality time so that you understand one another, but more importantly, that you can find alignment and mutual connection to the larger student success reform agenda that we're trying to advance. Next slide. Once we move past the traits, then we get to the structures that will support the nurturing of those traits, right? And it's the board meetings. We've mentioned the agendas so that there's focus in what matters most. And it's also providing information in a way that's easily accessible and understandable. There's so much inside baseball in higher ed. And if you are on the board and you've never worked inside of the sector, it is important for you to be provided with information in a way that's understandable and accessible. That includes data that can be provided, you know, back in the day, it would be reams and reams of paper. And now there's tons of dashboards. If the dashboards are not accessible, it's just as useless as the reams and reams of paper, right? And so are we providing data in ways that are accessible and understandable, for example? When we think about the individual conversations, are they grounded in what matters most? Absolutely, it's important to build connections and have social time and interpersonal relationships, but are you getting to those conversations that matter? And once, as board members, you understand the why and the what, you can, in those one-on-one conversations, go more deeper into the things that are of interest to you or are of concern that may not be appropriate to have in a more open forum. But the nature and the tone and the tenor of those conversations can shift as you get more grounded in the why and the what, and you start to look forward and maximize that one-on-one time to set you up for success. And so what you're trying to move away from is engagement that is rote, right? And is not necessarily advancing any particular strategies or large-scale reforms, to engagement that is more intentional and designed to build and reinforce the common purpose that will help to drive this work. And to that end, the learning sessions that you all have referred to can be extremely helpful in that regard as well. And then relatedly, when you start to think about evaluation a little bit differently, it's not based, you know, solely on the business mission and the enrollment and the budgets focus, but you think more broadly about student outcomes and enrollment and budgets within the context of serving larger strategic goals and reforms. Next slide. And so what does it mean to sustain this kind of approach to reform over time? Well, we study quite a bit of what excellent colleges do. And what we've discovered is that these institutions don't base their searches on personality or the flavor of the moment, right? What they look for are the kinds of leaders who will fit the needs of the institution, the kinds of leaders who can advance the reform agendas that they deeply understand in very strategic and effective ways. And that doesn't start with the profile of the candidate. It starts with a very deep and aligned understanding across the board of what's going to be right for our community and our institution, given the reforms and the agendas we've been advancing through the current tenure of our leader. And so you see 5 questions here that will help you to begin to think about what's the right approach for your institution. And they're questions consistent with the work that you're doing, right? And so what are your goals for the coming 5 years? You don't want to think about too short a horizon because you want to give your president, the new president, a runway to understand the institution. At the same time, you want to maintain some momentum, right? And hopefully you identify a leader who will help create the vision for the 5 years following those 5. But you want to think in a horizon that really gives you an opportunity for meaningful change. Relatedly, what are the strengths that your institution is bringing at this point in time to help you believe they can reach those goals? You cannot answer questions about strengths if you're not having the kind of conversations that you have already elevated in your reflections. Your understanding of the program mix, your understanding of what the living wage expectations are for people to be successful, your understanding of the completion rate, the transfer out, the bachelor's attainment rate. Like you've got to understand what those metrics are and how the institutions deliver those metrics to really get a sense of your strengths as a college. And that will also reveal your vulnerabilities, right? And thinking about where do you envision a leader helping you to shore up the institution in order to close the gaps that matter to you most. And so on some level, it's a deep appreciation for your institution through multiple lenses that's developed over time. The reason why we share this particular component at this point in time is because as you're doing the work of boxes 1, 2, and 3, we want you to keep this in mind. And we want you to keep it in mind as it relates again to the evaluation of your current president, but you're building a body of knowledge for yourself individually and as a board in preparation for transitions down the line. And it's only when you've answered the first 3 questions, you can start to think about the qualities that you will need in a new CEO. The qualities in your current CEO will help you to tease some of that out. Some of those qualities you will want to retain, and there may be some that may not be appropriate for the next wave of reform. So that's body of knowledge and information that you'll be collecting along the way. And then once you've answered all those questions, you can think about where might you find this candidate. You know, very often what we find is institutions that have been very much aligned with Aspen research, Aspen frameworks, et cetera, that one place that institutions like that look for candidates are they look for candidates that have been exposed to our work, or they look for candidates that have done reform through ATD, NCII, CCRC, acronyms that might mean nothing to the board, but presidents know these are reform-minded organizations that help to build the muscle for reform. Or you might want to look for a CEO that has more experience in workforce, if that's an area where you envision post-completion student success to have the most impact, or in transfer and university partnerships aligned to workforce. But you cannot start with that question if you are not really clear about what you're aiming for. And to assist and support you, we have a toolkit that is identified here that is available to you with some of the qualities of exceptional presidents, as well as rubrics and questions that can help you along this process. Next slide. So one example we'd like to share is the most recent Aspen Prize winner, Southwest Technical College in rural Wisconsin. And the reforms they were aiming for in this not only deeply rural, but really poor community extremely limited resources, not a significant amount of economic growth and opportunity, but there are opportunities there. And this technical college is trying to figure out how to improve the program mix in their community, but more importantly, to elevate, to get students out of poverty. They made a commitment that they did not want to graduate students into poverty, particularly because of what it costs students in terms of time and money to invest in their education. So really, post-completion student success and changing students' lives drive. I'm sorry, can everyone mute themselves, please? Thank you, thank you. And so Southwest Tech, in an effort to improve student success, really developed a guiding vision, and the board got on board, right? And they started to identify college-wide health indicators. That was their way of identifying priorities and establishing shared goals to advance post-completion student success. They changed their annual review program process to include a robust analysis of employer needs and labor market data, and they revamped programs in order to limit the number of low value or low opportunity programs and to reallocate resources in ways that would advance post-completion student success. As a result, we see their graduation and transfer rate increased significantly. And in fact, 5 years after completion, the students who've attained an associate's degree or a certificate have earnings that exceed the average. And this is the momentum that was happening at Southwest Tech. However, if we go to the next slide, if I bring the board into the conversation, the board really understood everything that I just shared with you, and the board was on board in advancing student success. However, they reached a sticky point. At one point, the college recognized that in order to continue to increase their student success outcomes, they needed to make some systemic change for all students. And within that community, there was a growing Hispanic population. And some of the strategies they were considering, board members interpreted as if they would be perceived as DEI or tailored solutions for a subpopulation, when in fact the president's agenda was systemic change, but recognizing unless the systemic change addressed the needs of all students, if it wasn't designed for everyone's student success, it would fail as a systemic solution. And as you can imagine, in communities all across the country, these kinds of conversations also come with strong political opinions and strong political divisions. And so it's not an uncommon trend for the board to be divided along these lines in this day and age. And so the president actually made a decision to have the board engage in a curated experience, not unlike this one, in order to develop a deeper understanding of the why and the what. He affirmed their commitment not to graduate any students out of poverty and made sure to elevate the conversation so that it remained in the student success realm, reminding them of what they believe mattered most. He then got feedback from students, and in student surveys, it revealed that students were making decisions about which programs to enroll in, not through a structured and informed process, but it seemed accidental and coincidental and not necessarily aligned to a sense of purpose that had more meaning than what they may have heard anecdotally through unsolicited advice or in ways that wasn't designed to really set them up for success. So you can see where this is headed, right? That there was a need for Southwest Tech to invest in developing an advising solution at scale that would equip students to make better decisions to get into programs of value that would lead them to sustaining wage jobs. In order for the board to really understand why this investment was needed and why an investment at the scale that the president wanted them to invest would be necessary, he had the board complete an individual education plan. And this exercise, where the board went through the process as if they were a student, revealed the value of the exercise, but also underscored the importance of the investment. And as a result of that activity, they not only were able to get the right investments to develop the kind of advising infrastructure they needed, but they were also able to get resources from a capital plan that they developed that took the money from the low value programs that were closed and redirected those resources into the kind of advising infrastructure that was needed. The president then met with each board member one-on-one to have a follow-up conversation that reinforced the why and the what, that responded to individual questions or concerns. You can imagine, like Gerald mentioned, like those kinds of conversations where a board member can think through and also be heard in ways where their input can help enrich the solutions. But the president spent the time one-on-one with board members in order to develop that understanding and to get their alignment to support the long game. And as a result, once the advising structure was in place, we saw 97% of students were on an ed plan, which helped them to develop a sense of purpose and connection, but more importantly, to identify more programs of high opportunity in order for them to get on a pathway to post-completion student success. And so we share this example as a strategy for if and when a board may be divided, how might you get that board to realign behind the larger student success goals for the institution? And so take down the slides and open up the conversation for any questions, reflections, or observations. And Josh, if there's anything you'd like to add, I invite you to jump in as well.
Recording stopped.
I think you told the story great. Thank you, Pascal. I do think that the amount of division in that community was not small. And this is Chatham House rules here, right? Let's not share that outside of this group, but this was a college that had done amazing work in teaching and learning reforms and in program review, going to annual program review. They were really together and the board understood why they were there, but there were a lot of other challenges that were coming into the conversations. And I do think that the leadership team's ability to be really clear that getting every student on an ed plan was going to part of improving post-graduation success. Who can argue with that, right? So there was something about the focused reform that became unassailable. Like, that's not a political thing. Who wouldn't want their kid to be on an ed plan? Who doesn't believe the research that says when students are on plans earlier and have a sense of what they want to do, that they're more likely to complete and get good jobs when they're on high value plans? These are really apolitical things, which is really what we're all after, no matter what our political views, is helping students succeed. So I just want to say that I think, Pascal, you told a really great story about very specifically what was done and how that brought people together. But I do think at these moments of increasing division in politics that often spill over into families and workplaces and other places, the question is, what do you do to keep that from harming students? Right? Whatever it is, I'm not really speaking about what side one's on. I think we all have an interest in making sure that these divisions don't spill over into our capacity to do the work together. So it is a terrific example of where the why and what of reform enabled the college to move forward. So thank you, Pascal, for sharing that story so well.
Any other reflections from the colleges or any of the facilitators? Well, given that there aren't any reflections, I am going to turn it back to you, Leanne, to send us off into our breakout groups.
Thanks, Pascal. As Pascal said, we're about to go into our breakout time together. We're going to give you a little bit of time back for your first workshop because I know Zoom takes a couple seconds to get us where we need to go. So your first workshop will now run from 12:05 to 12:55 Central. So make note of that, and we will remind you via the chat feature as well. Track A colleges, you will be using pages 10 to 11 in your participant toolkit for this first activity. You will also be with your facilitator, and you will have a robust discussion around sustaining reforms as you complete this fellowship and move into your regular board cadence. Track B colleges, you'll be using page 12 through 13 in your participant toolkit. And CEOs, you will lead this discussion. And what you'll find on page 12 to 13 in your toolkits is essentially a chart that asks you to think through holistically what work you're doing together in relationship to this content and what work you need to carry forward. So CEOs, you'll kick off the conversation if you're in track B, and then we will switch. So we'll have a short break. During this break, please do not disconnect from Zoom, and in fact, stay in your Zoom room. You can always put yourself on mute, turn your camera off, take a stretch break as needed, but then from 1 to 1:50, we'll essentially switch activities. So on my track A schools, your CEOs will lead your teams in that reflection chart that I mentioned on page 12 through 13. While the track B colleges, your facilitators will Zoom to you and join you for the facilitator-led discussion. If there are any questions about this, please drop those in the chat and we will answer them. And right now, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Yvette Becker to get you to your Zoom rooms. But as a reminder, just stay in your Zoom rooms and we will bring you all back here at 1:50 for our final close.
Thank you, everybody. I'm about to put you in your rooms. If you experience any technical difficulties, please again feel free to hop back into the main room, or you can text the number that Leanne provided at the beginning of the session. Thanks so much.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. I can tell that you all took a bathroom break and that are taking a bathroom break, and that's perfectly fine. Will you just let me know when you kind of have the room back, and we'll start up then.
Sounds good. We'll do that.
In there.
I hope we're almost all back.
Oh, I know. Well, it was just reporting out.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. I can hear you clearly.
Everyone on mute. Hi, Hope. How are you doing?
Hello, how are you?
Great, thanks. We just needed a couple minute break there.
I was actually a little shocked that they didn't give us a bathroom break. So when I realized that you all were going, I was like, you know what? Me too. So that was really smart. Are you ready to start, or would you like for me to
Think we're
wait?
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Well, I am not sure who is with you this time that may not have been with you the last time that we met, or the first time. Oh, we have some hands up. Yay. Okay. Well, I'm going to quickly introduce myself. My name is Hope Rivers, and I serve as the president of Piedmont Technical College in South Carolina. We call them technical colleges. They are comprehensive community colleges, just like what you have in Texas. In South Carolina, because of the important work that we do with advanced manufacturing, our legislators wanted to make sure that we kept that technical in our name. So we did that. I have been working with in higher ed for 30 years. Actually, 30 years almost to the date. Next week, I'll get my 30-year pin for my time in higher ed. So I spent a lot of my time working with the Technical College System Office. So the state board for South Carolina. So working with the board members, working with the presidents was where I spent a large amount of my time period. And then in that capacity, I was over academic affairs, student affairs, institutional research, and grants. So from there, moved on to be a president at one of the colleges. So that's kind of how I get to you today, just from background and work and all that I guess I did at one point in my career as it related to working with boards and trying to create that kind of the harmony between the president and board members. So today our challenge is really kind of to take a break, take a breath and say, okay, where are we with our reform agenda? I had the pleasure of spending some time with your president just last week. So we could talk about a little bit of the ebbs and flows of what's happening, on campus, and just compare notes as from president to president. So I know that a lot is happening, and that's tricky. That's one of the things that I say to you, just so that you all remain aware of that, is that we go through these processes like the Aspen Institute, or whether it's Achieving the Dream, or whatever that initiative is that you're taking on. And the tough part about it is really keeping that at the forefront, because so many things start to come our way. And so you're putting out other fires, but we always remind ourselves to make the main thing the main thing. So we got into this work, all of us around the table. You could sit me right at your table and I would be right there with you. We got into this work because we care about students, we care about student success, and we care about our communities. I don't even have to poll the group. I already know, because you can't do this work unless you are excited about that. So from my time working with Aspen, that was one of those, the thing that I would always put in the forefront, and use this opportunity when working with Aspen to say, okay, this gives me a carve out of my day to really think about, where are we going? So let me ask, if you don't mind, Dr. Connor, just giving us a reminder, everyone around the table, just a quick thumbnail reminder of the reform or reforms for which we are attempting to tackle as a board.
Sure. And I'd included the smaller packet with that's together with 3 pages. I included that from the work that we've done so far, just because I thought we might want to look back on it and refer to it. And we're in, I think that the work that we're doing here is perfectly timed to tee us up as we're getting ready to have our new strategic goals.
but then we still have things happening in the meantime. And so the first page that talks about the student success reforms that we discussed last time. So that's the work that we're doing on our dual credit concentration, the work we're doing behind Badger Bound, and have that being a very intentional model that runs all the way through kindergarten up through our students completing their degrees with the university. So our work isn't just done. That's what that whole 3.0 version, that it's not just they cross our stage and we're done, but how do we make sure they transfer and they complete the degree they want? The second's the first year seminar that we have that's mandatory for all of our students to help them be ready and more we're ready to be successful in their classrooms. And then the last is tutoring, which we have as mandatory for any student that fails a test. Then they get referred and they need to go to tutoring so that we can really catch them before it gets too late. So that's the first column or the first page. The second page I included was the reform that we had talked about too, that would be could possibly have policy and budget considerations, and that's relating to transfer. So building those stronger co-curricular partnerships with universities as we're looking at how do we help increase transfer and growth. And since then, I think we've also had some conversations as we're looking towards our new strategic plan of whether some of that success also rolls into us having a bachelor's degree. And then lastly is the survey that you all completed related to what we found is most important in our board agenda. And that's something that we haven't, we've started to make progress on. We've had some changes, the financial dashboard, so the way that we've been communicating the finances, as well as some more, strategic reports that we're doing both with students and other things that are happening at the college. And I just see as we firm up what our strategic goals are over this summer to be ready for the new fiscal year, that's going to very nicely then align for us determining what metrics and dashboards and report outs we would then be doing to be tracking that. And I see our student success reforms rolling up as part of our strategic goals. Is that kind of what you're looking for, Hope?
Yes, no, that actually is perfect. So now let's take a moment and trustees, I'll say to you, let's kind of delve in a little bit and say, okay, do I remember these? Are there any questions that I have about these reforms that we're talking about? Dual credit, Badger Bound. I certainly remember that. We spent some time on that. First year seminar, what questions might we have on that? And then we'll stop at the mandatory tutoring. And the reason I like to do this, and I do this with my board, we just had our board retreat. Gosh, it feels like last week, but it was really just the day before yesterday. So it was in this week. But one of the things that I do, and I've encouraged Dr. Connor to do this as well, is repeat things over and over again. You all have other lives, some have other jobs, other volunteering things that you do. So let's just continue to repeat those things so that you understand what is it that we're talking about. With my board and with my executive team, I like to say, hey guys, let's prepare them as though they're going to be stopped at the grocery store. Because that's the one place where you're out of place. You're not thinking about, that piece, and then someone stops you. And it's really nice to be able to understand kind of what's happening at the college. So with any of the three, we'll leave transfer and the board agenda. We'll talk about that. I like that piece a lot too. But let's talk about those first three. Any questions that you might have, or just comments that you want to have on those three kind of agenda items the reforms that you are looking at?
This is Jay Barrett, Hope, board chair.
Yes.
The dual credit concentration, which we call Badger Bound, we had a very robust report on that at our last board meeting. And that was something that came out of our January meeting, is streamlining a lot of what we do in board meetings, and then really get back to these kinds of reports and get more information around the really important things that we're doing. And it was really good to hear that information. And then we found out that it's growing so much that we may have to start allocating some resources for additional staff once it reaches over 3,000 students. Right now it's 2,700 or something like that. That we're gaining through the Badger Bound program. And we don't want to stress the people who are actually working that program to the point where it becomes watered down, because we're actually able to get into now the regional, even kindergarten classrooms to start talking about what kind of futures they could have through Amarillo College, the kinds of careers that they could gain, and all of that. So I think we're starting to do that kind of work where our board meetings, we're getting rid of a lot of the fluff out of there, because they become cumbersome, meaningless in some parts. And that's why we did this survey, was to find out what we wanted to keep and not keep or enhance. And I think really we've done a good job of that so far.
No, that actually sounds amazing, in that what you're doing is really what this reform approach is about. Sometimes we start, like I said, with a reform and we think, well, gosh, what are we actually getting out of it? But what you just described is perfect. Like, we could give the mic to you and go. Because what you want to do is look at dual enrollment and not just, oh, we're doing more dual enrollment, but you're really looking at it and trying to determine what impact is that having on your college. What impact is that having in the communities that you serve? And another piece that is often missed, but you're going to get straight A's, is that what impact does that have on your current faculty and staff?
Yes.
What I love about what you said is you have an indicator that lets you know when you might need more assistance. So when we hit that 3,000 mark, we really need to think about it. And that, again, is part of this work, because the question that is on here is, okay, does the budget align with your priorities? What you just described is right now it does. Yeah, we're okay right now, but you can see kind of where you're going to bump it up into something where you may need to do a different type of alignment by hiring an additional staff person. So good stuff there.
Well, and the thing is, we can't trust them, because they'll say, yes, we're okay. But, that's just because they're good. We want to make sure that at that 3,000, we give them additional support, and that'll make them feel even better about the work that they're commissioned to do.
Absolutely. Jay, you're trying to get a plus today. See, he's showing out. Because let me say that is a secret that many don't figure out, which is, it is really hard to get your staff to tell you that they have to have and they need someone else. Yeah. They'll try to parse it out first. But we're going to give Johnny this part and we'll give Mary that part. And what I want you all to do as board members, as you're listening, is keep that in the back of your minds. Sometimes we do need to give Johnny a little bit more, or give Mary a little bit more, because their plates are not as full as they need to be. Sometimes we need to do that. But there are times where we're like, no, it's too much, and I can see that we don't want to burn out our current staff. So almost that barometer of saying, or have we reached that threshold where we have to be concerned about burning people out?
Yep.
Others.
Irene, you have questions?
Some questions, not for Hope, but for us. Okay, so how many staff do we have doing the dual credit?
We have three. Yep. So in the presentation that Becky gave at the last board meeting, that's when she walked through all of that. So we have three, and then we've been adding quite a few adjuncts as we've been offering more courses to be able to cover those. And then what I've been doing as we're building our 26-27 budget is I've had everybody putting in base the budget on our revised budget that I brought to you all in November when I did some of those decreases, that we start there with the goal of just looking at what you need, putting in now, we actually added a field where they need to, if they ask for anything more, they have to put in justification for that. all personnel requests, so new positions and reclassifications need to be put in, and it's all part of a cabinet board retreat. So previously, and I started it this past year, before that, people got to add positions just based on if they got with the CFO and the CFO said, yeah, we've got money, do it. But we need to be strategic in what we're adding and why. So with that work, all the cabinet members bring forward all of their proposals for positions. And we first look at what are kind of we looking at for strategy over the next year and priorities. And then we look at how much money we have. And then the cabinet has to I walk out of the room and let them have very frank discussions, and they need to prioritize and then say, this is what's important. And this past year, which was the first, they did a really great job of coming in and saying, we have this much money. We've agreed these can wait, these can wait. We need to support these areas. We're doing that again this year. As well as each cabinet member has to meet with me and go over the rest of their operational budget so that we can be sure that strategically we're putting our funds where we need to have them. And then when I'm having the board retreat with you all this year, it won't be perfect because we didn't do zero-based budgeting yet, but in trying to make sure that you all are seeing strategically where we're putting our resources, we're going to be doing some level of trying to group up the budget cost to say, this much is moving towards this reform. This is going to help us in this area in supporting students. So you won't just see the numbers, but you'll see how those are aligning strategically to the work that we've agreed we need to be targeted on.
How many schools? This is probably something that she said you need to say it over and over again.
And it's a fine question.
They already, I guess they told us, but how many schools are involved in this dual credit now?
It's all in our service area, right?
Yes.
How many MOUs do we have, maybe? It's more than 20.
I was going to say, I've signed at least, I would say 25 to 30.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking 29 is the thought I had in my mind, but again, we need to get that down. But
and we are getting, and so all of the majority are ISDs that are in our service area are very interested in jumping on, especially those that have been in the rural areas that didn't have access to Thrive for their students. Yeah. We're also getting requests from outside our region because they're hearing about what we're doing and they're very excited. They want their students to have that opportunity. Yeah. For that, we're being very careful because some of them, the other community colleges are technically their service, they should be serving them. We let that other college know, and then we work with the ISD to say, hey, this is what your local community college is already offering. Let's talk about what pathways can we build for your students and what different courses we could offer that then they could still get the 15 credits with AC, but we're not trampling on top of the other community colleges. And that's been working really well so far.
Coordinate with those other ISDs.
Yep.
Then the homeschooling was involved too, right?
Yes.
I'm going to hang up, leave out early. I mean, goodness gracious, this is really good. I will tell you if I'm like, okay, I'm a little concerned, but let me hit some things that you all said because I want you to hear yourselves. Sometimes when we're doing the work, we forget to hear ourselves. So what Dr. Connor just explained to you all and have her to re-explain it, and we won't get tired of re-explaining it. I absolutely promise you that, is that budget process. So in the past, even at my college, in the past, the squeaky wheel was getting the oil. Did not have to be the strategically most appropriate person or area, but it really was the squeaky wheel. So I'll give an example. We do horticulture. Our horticulture program is absolutely wonderful. And everybody was using horticulture, from your hospitals to everybody. So if horticulture wanted something, somehow or another, they were getting it. Well, when I came on board, I was like, okay, so horticulture is in this line item. Wow, I'm looking at another, this is a grant. Horticulture is over there. Wow, horticulture, like they're everywhere. But we weren't really being as strategic as we needed to be. What was just described is every area will be, and this is what we do at my college as well. Every area will bring forward kind of their budget. How we will plan to use the funds that we have. We will also share with you the areas that need additional personnel or need something additional. They will bring that forward. That is perfectly fine. Now, we don't have just a limitless amount of money. So this is where the president earns her stripes, because the hard work happens in no is a full sentence. N-O, and then you put the period. It's a full sentence. But what she described is something that we are doing as well, which is let's allow the VPs, the president's leadership team, you bring them in, and let's together prioritize what's really important based upon our strategic plan and based upon which these are going to be part of the strategic plan, but the priorities that you have listed here. So I like talking about the three because it's real easy. I know your priorities. You got dual enrollment, you have freshman year experience or seminar course, and then also looking at your mandatory tutoring. Like, how does this fit in? So what happened at my institution is very similar to what was just mentioned to you. I didn't walk out of the room, but basically I said, hey guys, we don't, there's limits to how much funding we have. Let's talk about the needs that we have right now and which of these things can wait. And you will be amazed at when you put them that way, how they as a team come up with what is priority. And so they did. And then it's an honestness to it, because what we say to you is that now it doesn't mean that you will never get that. You may just have to wait on yours. This year, this is more important. Next year, bring that back forward if needed, and then we will look at that again. So what you're doing now with that budget process really should firm up the budget process for you, and it makes it really transparent. Questions and comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
Annette here. So we've been working on this for a little while, and we're doing really well on what we're doing. But while these are maintained and sustained going forward, we will add new things to it, particularly with the
Strategic goals.
strategic goals. So is this part of what we're doing today, is figuring out how we transition, keeping these and adding to them, new ones to them? Or do we scrap these and start all over, which I know isn't the answer?
It's a great question. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I see these will, not knowing exactly what the strategic goals are going to be, but I think these will roll up into all be part of our overall strategic goals. These are going to be, because these are student success reforms. These are more tactical of what we're going to be doing to get us where we need to be. And so they'll roll up and be part of underneath our strategic goals.
Yeah.
But they'll have focus
items.
That's how I see it.
Yeah, I 100%. Like I said, I'm just going to tell, they just let me go early. But no, I 1,000,000,000% agree with that. They're going to roll up into, as mentioned, the larger conversation. But what I love about kind of the tactics and how we're going to do it is that it needs to be bite-sized for trustees. You don't need to be able to explain it the same way that a college president can explain exactly what you're doing. But you need to be able to say, yes, I absolutely know what we're doing with Badger Bound. And I know that we have partnerships with 29 districts, and whatever that number is, once you all figure that out. Like there's just some bite-sized pieces that you will know. And then what should happen is Dr. Connor is going to bring you information in your board meetings, as your chair just said, because they're becoming more student focused, and you understand what's happening kind of with your student success prior initiatives. Every, let's say, 3 to 6 months, something will come forward and connect the dots in turn back to dual enrollment. See, we're doing XYZ, but that actually connects back to dual enrollment. Oh, we're talking about let me see, we're talking about completion rates in chemistry, but wait a minute, that's actually back to our mandatory tutoring. Like, I don't have to say mandatory tutoring because it's going to start to, like, every conversation, you understand how that's connecting back. Now, what I do with my board, and I've done this for many years, is I continuously tell you how it connects so that you're not searching for it. Let me just tell you how it connects. But after some time, every conversation, you'll understand what piece of this is connecting and you'll feel more informed. So you're not just adding on to add on. Now, while I have the floor, I will say this because I think it was a really, really good question in terms of what was just asked. In the past, community colleges especially, we would get initiative fatigue. Every initiative, every time you turn around, we're doing something different. We're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing. And then you're like, now, how did that connect to everything? And we're like, I mean, it was fun while it lasted. And so that's what we're really trying to, we're getting away from, number one. And we're avoiding that. And Aspen doesn't teach that. They actually teach the whole, like, keep it going. It's really, really hard once you've gone through the Aspen training to not be able to see how things should connect, or either they need to be dropped. And I say to my folks all the time, my president's leadership team, and we're busy, busy, busy. Busy doesn't matter. Everybody's busy. I can get busy doing just whatever, counting some, sticks. Are we doing what's important? And that's the work that you all are entering into, and actually not even entering into, you are in those now. I told a fib because I said I was going to be quiet, but there was something else that was said, and then I'll pause. The board agenda. I remember when we talked before, we said, well, how long are your board meetings? What's happening at the board meetings? Those kinds of things. So it sounds like you all are also working on what that board agenda looks like, making sure that you are getting real information that helps you to make informed decisions. And then it was mentioned that you're doing that, you have dashboards. I love dashboards. Dashboards say, these are the numbers. These are the facts. You can go out there. I have them for my trustees. They can go out there and look at the dashboards. You could pull the dashboards up in the middle of a meeting because these are the data. And we're not hiding anything. We're not perfect, but we're not hiding anything. So where I tell you where we're doing really, really well, Dr. Connor will also tell you, okay, well, look at this, because I'm just making it up, but fall to fall retention looks amazing, but when we go X years out, we have a little work to do. Again, I'm making all of that up, but the dashboards are what allow you to be able to see that. And then you have strategic reporting that's part of that. So when you start to ask questions, all of those things are right there. So good stuff there. Okay, other questions as we think about, like, where do we go from here? But other questions before we kind of jump into what's next.
Well, I think what I'm hearing, and we've got it easy with Jamel. I mean, we really do. But what I'm hearing is we're doing things with intentionality.
Oh, yes.
And I think that makes the difference. Instead of throwing spaghetti on the wall to see if it sticks, it's being intentional with what we're deciding to do, with how we're deciding to spend the money, with where we're prioritizing everything. It goes back to, is this leading to student success? And in the way that Jamel's doing it, I think it brings buy-in from the faculty to be able to say, okay, this is why we think this is important. And then for those meetings, Jamel, when you walk out, they can hash that out and everybody gets a dose of reality. Let's really look at this rather than just, well, we've always gotten this. I think she's doing a great job with the intentionality in it, which makes it easy for us.
I will agree with that. I wasn't going to say anything, but Jamel, I'm going to go ahead and tell a little bit of our meeting. I told her that. I think that just being really intentional about how that agenda is set up, really intentional about the information that is brought forward to the trustees the good data. We always want to share the good data, but I also want you to know, and she wants you to know, the areas for which we are weak, things that need to be cleaned up, so that you can always be on the same page. We operate in this like no surprises type of mentality, and she really does a phenomenal job with that. Even as you look at issues that you may or may not have had with your budget and how things work with the CFO, maybe before the one that you have now, and all of those things. At this point, that is, I'm going to say, somewhat water under the bridge, in that you're not going to be operating like that ever again. You have a president that understands, and you've had plenty. Your previous president was a great president as well, but you've had wonderful leadership. But I know Jamel more, and I would say you have a president who wants to make sure that where the money is going matches the intention of the college. We're being very intentional about that. And when that happens, faculty, staff, everyone can feel it. They know the difference between throwing spaghetti against the wall and really like, okay, wait a minute, we're really working on, tutoring, or we're really working on transferring. So let's talk about a little bit, Jamel, in terms of your view. If you had to share with your board, like, what do you want to make sure they leave this conversation, this session with, in terms of the three main ones, which dual enrollment, first year seminar, and mandatory tutoring. But you have some other ones that are floating that are so important. You have your transfer and kind of the board agenda reform. What do you want us to think about next? What are our next steps?
I think for me, like I mentioned, us being able to have these couple of sessions is very timely. And I think all of this is kind of like this work in progress that's getting ready to accumulate, and us being able to be extremely aligned with what our North Star is, where the college is heading. Hope you mentioned about, how many things that we're doing. And I think, Jay, you talked about initiative fatigue. And that's what I've been telling the college family, my commitment of, once we figure out what our goals are going to be, we also have those tough discussions about what we stop doing that could be good things, but what makes the most sense that aligns with our mission. And so then in doing that, forming our board agendas in a way is my goal, so that you all are kept up to speed with all of that. Where we're at, where we're maybe struggling, what things we're trying new, so that you feel like you're definitely in the loop when people are asking, to know where we're headed, and we're being very transparent and telling you where we're at and what we're doing. And so all of this is really great information as I see us kind of lining up, especially over the next few months of the summer, to get ready to launch the new strategic plan.
What's the date going to be on the strategic plan? I was thinking that it was like 5-year plan, like 25 to 30, but now we're at 26.
26 to 31, I guess.
It's not going to be a 4-year, but a 5-year going into the next
decade.
I wondered about that.
Yeah. And so I finished up all of the different forums, where I was getting feedback. And so the strategic planning committee meets next week to kind of take all of that data and put together some initial drafts for me to see of what our goals might be. And so then by the time I have that, which should be into May, then we can start having conversations to firm those up. That then lets me spend the rest of the summer with the college family and aligning the goals underneath those strategic goals that are going to help us get there, but also that intentional work with them of, what do I do every day in my role that is going to get us where we're going, so everyone knows where their piece is in the strategic goal, because that's really important work too, so that we're ready for that September 1 date where we're kind of locked and live.
Can you remind me again? Say it again and again. Who's on the strategic planning committee?
Oh, it's made up of, it's faculty and staff. It's made up of probably 15 to 20 people from across multiple departments and divisions. And then we've on each of the, similarly to how I've done some work with you all in board meetings to get your feedback and ideas. With all the different groups that I've met with, have gotten them both individually and in small groups to give feedback. And so all of that's what goes over for them to put out there, and they kind of have their different ways of filling that out. AI sometimes is great, right? You can take all this and throw it in and say, hey, what are some of the key points?
You also had the community forum.
The community forum was last week.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Are we including any students in the?
I did a student forum. I did a student focus group.
Yeah, I knew you did.
Yep. So we were very intentional in not just having the SGA, right? Who kind of getting students that are from different backgrounds involved in different things across the school. They were fantastic. I had the best time talking with them. And what I really like too is, as I've had, I had a separate one with faculty, a separate one with staff, one's with the students, the one with the community, feedback from you all. And I purposefully don't feed them what other groups have said, because I just want to see, am I hearing similar things? And I love that it does. I hear similar things from everyone of where they kind of are looking for us to go, which is exciting. So, we're doing also work internally at the college level to start not only with my cabinet and my VPs on being ready and knowing how to move our strategic plan forward, but we're also going to be in professional development and succession planning, starting with a group of directors and managers. I think we've got 20 to 25. I've just had cabinet finish going through Good to Great, if any of you have read that book, on looking to be, how do we be a great college?
Jim
It's
Collins.
a book on how to, it's more in business, right? But what makes the difference between a good company and a great company that really shines? And we're applying that to the college. But we're going to be taking directors and managers through that same work, because with the strategic plan, it can't just be the cabinet. We've got to have those directors and managers also knowing how do they strategically run their teams. So we're also working on that as well.
Mine too.
Right. How does everybody
I'm
fit
sure
in?
you've already realized, but Dr. Connor is excellent at listening and taking information in and gathering it all. She's really, really good at that. And people feel heard when they speak with her and work with her, which is good.
Yeah, I absolutely will agree with them on that. I'm very, very open and transparent and willing to, to try some different. It has been a pleasure for me to work with you all, to work with her. Let me, as I listen to you talk, I would say with your strategic plan, I'll give you some points of from my vantage point, and if it doesn't work well, toss it out. How this works, throw it in the trash. But one of the things that we did, because my team felt like with their previous strategic plans, they were always boiling the ocean. And they could never figure out where they were. It was just like, everything is like, oh my gosh, it's so massive, it's so big. I have to remember this, I have to remember that. So what we did is we have a 5-year strategic plan, but the facilitator that we had helping us said, why don't you all do this? Make it kind of a 3-year strategic plan, knowing that you're going to come back in and really do a deep dive checkpoint at 3 years. And then you'll bring that to the board, kind of saying, here we are at year 3. And if you will give us permission, we'll go ahead and finish out those last 2. Does that kind of make sense? That made a huge, I didn't think it was going to make a huge difference. We did it. But that made a huge difference. And we just finished our new strategic plan, and the teams asked if we could do the same thing, which is a strong 3-year checkpoint. Like, where are we? Are we just talking, just saying some words and never really come back to them? Or are we really following kind of what we've mapped out? And they enjoyed it. This is the first time that they've really enjoyed and understood the strategic plan, what we're doing with Aspen, all of those things, like, coming together. So I would encourage you. I know we're going to check each year. We always do, to make sure where are we with the strategic plan, but maybe a true hard stop at some point to, you know, really say, okay, let me peel back this onion and see where we are in 3 years. The other thing that you all mentioned is we've all heard of the KISS method, and we know the KISS method as keep it simple, student. We've heard that forever. But a revised KISS method that I heard and I've given to my team is still KISS, but we're trying to figure out what is it that we're going to keep doing? What is it that we need to improve upon? What is it that we need to start doing? Because there's some things that we aren't doing that we need to start doing. And here's the tough one. What is it that we need to stop doing? Because there are some things that we've been doing because we've been doing them. And if anybody asks us why we did them, we don't know. Because we were doing them, why are we doing that? So I think as you're going through your strategic plan and looking at all of your reforms, constantly kind of asking yourselves those questions will be tremendous. Just to kind of you do that. Write down that new KISS method and just ask Dr. Connor that. Force her to, think about it. What is it that I need to keep doing? What is it that I need to be improving upon? What is it that I should start doing? And then, of course, to stop doing. The last thing that I'll say in terms of just listening to your conversation is sometimes wording means everything. So I found that when I talked to my team about succession planning, everyone got a little stiff. Because succession, for whatever reason, makes everybody feel like that means I'm being replaced. What are we talking about here? But what they really liked is talent management. So coming up with that kind of talent management plan. So that's the same work that you'll be doing in succession planning because you want to know. But when you think about talent management, what I say, it's a running joke. So if you came to my college, you would hear it. I was like, we're not talking about you leaving. We're not talking about you retiring. We're talking about when you get to go to Hawaii for 2 weeks. Who is able to do all of your stuff? Who can you look at and say, I know that Susie can do these things because you have managed your talent. And you understand, and everybody has a part of it. So again, just as I listen to you, trying to provide just a bit of insight on things that have been helpful to me, keep what is helpful, throw in the trash the things that you're like, we don't want to do that here, and we'll go from there. Thoughts before they come back and break us up? Any additional thoughts on, where you are, what you're doing next? How do you feel about where you are?
I guess my question is, as we add 1,000 students because of Badger Bowl.
Yeah.
And then we add 1,500 and then 2,000. What are the ramifications 5 years from now for the capacity to meet those needs of growing student populations? I know there's a limit. We won't just exponentially keep growing there, or I doubt we will. But are we building that into our strategy of moving forward?
That's a good point. Yeah, I'll definitely take a look at that. Look farther out.
Yeah, I'll say to you, that's a question that was asked of me because I did come in and and maybe I like Dr. Connor because we're very similar. But I did something very similar in terms of expanding dual enrollment. I wanted classes. I didn't really, if we have students that want to be a part of the, they need biology, they need English, they need whatever. I didn't want the limitation of, well, we can only put, we only have 25. So, and all sections are full. Well, maybe we need to open more sections, maybe if that, not for everything, but for some things. So what I said to the team is, if we are thoughtful in our approach, and if we really bring back budgetary constraints and areas for which we need to grow the budget, then some of those answers to the questions that you just posed will be right there at her fingertips, and you'll be able to see the same thing. Yes, we'd love to take, 30 more students, but we just cannot do it this year. Or when you mentioned kind of the Badger Bound, it's great to have folks that are not in your service area wanting you to service them, but we may not have the capacity. So nothing becomes wrong with those sentences when you're like, I'm not able to do this or do that piece at this time. So it really will be balancing that, because there's a lot of different ways you can blow a budget. And one would be taking on more than your college has the capacity to do. And so sometimes you have to say, not necessarily no, but not yet.
I would just,
Yours doesn't work, Johnny, you can't talk.
sorry. Hope that I'm Johnny Mize. I'm the Johnny you were talking about earlier. Thank you for helping us today and being here, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm sorry I missed the last couple of meetings. I was out of town. One of the things, and I think this is what I gained from Aspen, and I think that's what some of the real benefit of being involved with Aspen is being able to hear other stories.
Mm-hmm.
And what we heard about Southern Wisconsin, I think is what it was this morning, made me question, and I may get thrown out of the room and I may not be at any of the further at the next meeting. But it made me think, how do we define student success?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a real, I mean, we've been talking about student success for how long? 10 years? Or 8 or 10 years. And
It's 1929.
and I think it's important that we have clarity around that definition, because what I saw in the Southern Wisconsin was intriguing about how they said that they define success based upon the 5-year after completion earnings rate.
Mm-hmm.
And
how do you get that information? So I just throw that out just as a something that I think was valuable for me, but I think it's also important for us as we begin as we're entering into a new strategic planning, I guess era, or new whatever you'd call it, 3 years, 5 years, however we define it. I think it's important we know what is it we're really trying to achieve and have real clarity around that.
Yeah, no, I'm going to jump in on that one and say, yeah, when I saw that information probably a year and a half ago, I had the same visceral reaction. I was like, well, dang it, that's how I'm going to define student success. Like, you will not graduate from my college poor. Like that cannot happen. And honestly, that has been a fire that has been lit in me since I saw it, because I was like, I do not want my students to graduate and then have had the opportunity to work at like the gas station and make the same amount. So that took a moment. And so I do think that you all should grapple with, like, what does student success mean to you all? Like, what is that going to be for you at Amarillo? And so we did borrow that at Piedmont Technical College. We are very, very clear that if you graduate, and let's say you graduated into early childhood education, that field in South Carolina is not really known for high wages. So then the challenge became, for me, I needed to make sure that those students were transferring to a 4-year college. Now, let me be very clear and transparent, because that's the type of facilitator that you have. So I said to Josh Weiner, who's on the line, I said, well, Josh, gosh, some of my 4 years don't really, they don't really want to work with us, and they don't do what they're supposed to do, and this, that, and the other. He said, well, you got to go meet with them. Like, you can't just not on the phone. You got to get up from your desk, go over, meet with them again, carry the responsibility of knowing that you want those students to be able to transfer to them. So it just became something that, for me, when I heard it, I think you and I, Johnny, had the same reaction. And I was like, okay, I'm on this. Like, I cannot let them graduate and not be able to find a good job. So I did start setting up intentional meetings. I was having meetings with four-year presidents before, but real intentional meetings, and not just signings because we sign it and it's great and then we don't talk about it again for 6 months, but really getting intentional about that, because that became how I would like to define success on my college. So I think you all can have that same conversation in some of your retreats and things like that to really understand what does success mean to you.
Good, thank you.
I would say that student success really has levels, though, because I'm sitting here thinking, to me, student success could be that they actually graduate from Amarillo College.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're looking at 5 years after 4 year, but I'm saying we really need to look at trying to get them out of here. You know, we get them in, but are we going to get them out? And so it's kind of in levels of what you call success.
A parallel discussion to what you're talking about, Johnny, is we have to work with employers to find out what they feel are successes for them. Because I was told by an employer here in Amarillo, I'm not looking for university trained people. I've tried that path and they are entitled. This is speaking in generalities. He said they're not as good as somebody that I just get quality coming out of high school that we train. So we have to figure out what value added we're going to have to give our employers in our region what they need, and make sure that the students have that coming out of here. That's us versus universities. We're agile. We can meet those needs, but we've got to know those. And we've done this. We've worked with some of the regional employers. We've just got to continue to really speak to what they need to do. You need us to do for them.
There's another caveat that I think it's often, I don't want to say ignored, but underrepresented or under-recognized. We have young women that start, they might even go through completion. If we're looking at them in 5 years, they may have decided that they wanted to take time off to have their children and raise them till they get into school. That doesn't mean that their income has been harmed. It's been a choice. I made that choice to stay at home with my kids. I knew when I was older, I would have the ability to be gainfully employed again. But if we're factoring that in and looking at, well, women are underpaid or women aren't getting from Amarillo College what we think they should, I think we need to be very intentional of looking and talking to the women. And sometimes it's a husband that stays home with the kids because the wife's income is better. But looking at that and taking that in as a factor, so that we don't look at something and go, oh gosh, we've really blown it here. We failed. But it's been a conscious choice of some to step out of the workforce for a time. And how can we incorporate that into our data?
Actually, and I will say, Dr. Connor, we can talk offline. In South Carolina, we did put that in as a matrix. We wanted, when we survey folks to see where they are, if the man or woman, but it's usually the female, says that she's intentionally stepped away, then we don't want to be harmed for that. Yep. So we're held harmless for that. So that's, I mean, like I said, A plus, y'all not missing a beat. Like A++ today. So I see popping up on the computer that we need to make our way to the next thing. My only issue is I thought that they take us. I didn't know. I don't know how to make us get there.
Can't get there from here.
There was a number. There's a number that they gave you so that if you needed technical assistance.
I think the note came up that just said, we're going to stay in these. We can take like a quick bathroom break again. And then we just roll straight into the second one. It's break time,
Okay,
right?
perfect.
Going back into the big group.
Okay, thank you. So I will say to you all, because I'm not in your next, I will be on, but I'm going to mute myself and you all can mute me because you'll be working intently with your president. Let me just close by saying that it has certainly been a joy. It has been a joy watching you grow. It's been a joy working with all of you. Some of you I just met today, but I've really, really enjoyed it. You have a really good president sitting there before you that is going to take the college to the next level. I've said this to Dr. Connor. she has my number. She has my information. I am not a stranger anymore. So please feel free to reach out to me. And also in the middle of all the things that we do, all the things that we tackle, all the different directions that we go in, and all the things that we disagree on, the one thing that I'll leave you with is that the thing that we started off today, the conversation with, we are here because we like doing work with students. We like improving the lives of students. We like improving the lives of our communities. And if we can make that our North Star, if we can just be reminded of that every day, take ourselves out of it and doing that work, boy, what benefits our students and our communities will have. So again, it's been my pleasure. Bathroom break and all the things, and I'll see you all at the very end of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Finish it up.
Sure.
first part and then plan to stop by 140 to jump into the last little bit. So in bringing it all together, they've given us this reflection chart that's related to the 4 areas, the why and what, goal and metric, cost of the budgets, and CEO board relationship, that they're looking for us to kind of talk on for each one, kind of what work we've already started on them, what might be next steps, and then opportunities for barriers. And so since they did send this to me before, since I was going to be facilitating it, it was a little difficult because some of it seems very conceptual. So this is, if you go to
Page
this.
13.
Yeah, no, work.
12 and 13.
So I have things written down, so I didn't know whether we could go through each one. I could just come up with what I kind of had thought of off the top of my head, but then, you know, yeah, there we
Some
go.
ideas of what.
Then we can eat more brownies and be done. Okay, so for the first one, that's the why and what of reform, what I put, first for work advanced or underway, was that the board agenda, when we've started some, but we're gonna be continuing to, do more in including updates on our reform strategies, and giving you updates so that then you're able to be giving feedback and providing support for those. For next steps with that, I said, you know, as we've been strengthening MOUs with the ISDs and also universities as it relates to transfer to support student success reforms, that the support that you all have been showing for these strategies. So those new MOU opportunities are going to be coming up. And as they are, and I'm talking with you about them, then your support for us having those partnerships and making them worthwhile. And then opportunities or barriers, I said this would work well. This work will result in stronger enrollment, retention, completion, graduation, and transfer rates for our students with us and also through universities. So that's kind of what you were speaking to, Irene, about. Student success has different levels. And so when we're looking at these reforms, it's not just the end game, but it's also helping students all along the pathway with those. So that's what I thought of why and what reform. I don't know what else you all consider there.
Well, I did like Vicky's presentation on Badger Bound, and you know, Johnny and I are on AC Foundation, and the way it works is we give a report to AC Foundation about what we're doing, and then we give you a report here about what is happening at AC Foundation. So it's very mutual, but at the last AC Foundation meeting, I was able to just go through the board agenda and give them the highlights of what happened at our meeting, and gave them quite a bit of detail on Badger Bound because I had it, you know, from Becky. So as far as communicating, you know, to people who have questions or, you know, are supporters or whatever, it's a good method of letting people know what's going on in the college, because, you know, you don't hear it otherwise. I mean, you know, it's not like we have a newspaper that, I mean, besides the Tribune that's reporting stuff, so, you know, we used to have reporters at our meetings. Yeah. And we have a Tribune, just okay.
Sometimes they would go to the president's house,
Yeah.
which wasn't good.
Well, so, one of the things that I asked Becky, I wish I could remember right now, what her answer was, about any students falling through the cracks between what we had in Badger Bound. And she had an answer, there were some.
Between Thrive and Badger Bound.
Thrive.
So what we did was, with the overlap and with us starting Badger Bound, there was still time for any of those students to go ahead and get their 15 credit hours. So we made sure we offered opportunities so they could still get it under Badger Bound, and then be able to move into the Badger Bound program if they wanted.
So we're not.
There shouldn't be anyone that's falling through the gaps. And any one-offs that we're hearing of, Becky and her team are working with them so that we can help them.
So with the 15 hours, are they starting at all different levels, like freshman, sophomore, or most of them wait until they're seniors or juniors or whatever? How How are they?
Mostly
the majority
juniors and
want-
seniors.
They're doing it that way.
Mhm.
And for the police that are graduating,
They start freshman.
Do they even have an opportunity as freshmen?
Uh-huh.
Can they take
out?
Okay. I was just saying, I didn't know whether the ISDs, if they have concerns with it.
And like diplomas and degrees.
they need 60 hours if they're going to graduate and graduate.
And in the summers. All that.
Well, and then there's the ones who take dual credit and then don't go to college.
Mhm.
Now, that
Yeah,
just
that's
blew
It's
up.
a very large, it's a
It
large
just
percentage.
blows me away.
That blew, like, I don't even get that.
And that's what's gonna be, that's kind of one of the next indicators we're watching for, is we're seeing this growth in students taking
Yeah.
the 15 credit hours, or just at least taking more dual credit. Now it's gonna be, since fall will be our first time with those students rolling into being full-time college students, would be, okay, how much does that translate? Or is this making a difference in how many of these students, when they graduate high school, actually come to college and come to us?
So there's another step, see, that's a step backwards of student success, is that can you even get them here after they get their 15 hours? Because one of those, CCAT, I think, probably one of those conventions that I went to, it's a very high percent, like maybe 40% or something of those students that don't even get here after they've done all that. It's really, so we really need a strong group that's bringing them in and making them feel comfortable here. So many of them, their fear, I noticed when I was working, they'd just be afraid to even walk in the doors.
The college campus, nobody in their family's ever done it. Yeah.
It's terrible. And so we really, that's something we really need to focus on. You get to do it, but just making sure, like I would talk to the people at front desk and say, hey, you've got to be very creative. You've got to help them out. If you're not, those people that don't make much, they're the ones that are most important on it. In a business or in a campus, I said, if you don't treat them right, they're never gonna walk back through that door again. It'll be over just because of you.
And that's why we had people walking students and their parents from door to door when they need to move from advising to financial aid or something like that, take them there. And, we started that in the first few days of classes, there were people around. The staff and faculty were working to make sure everybody could find their way through the campus and get to their class, You miss your first class and you think, I'm dropping out, I'm done, yeah.
There's some people that if they see a bump in the road,
I know,
they can't.
I know.
That stops them. It's not, how can I? It's, I can't.
That's a really important piece.
And we're looking at how do we have more days, because we get some of them that come out and see the campus, right? But how do we get more days on campus where we have things that'll draw them out? Things like, well, come, hey, we got a volleyball game going on today. Come out, we can give you a tour, you then watch the volleyball game. And then we're also looking at, so like Caprock, they're a big feeder school to us, but they actually have one of the lowest rates of students taking dual credit right now. And so that's one that we're looking at, because that's almost the reverse issue. We're trying to figure out, here they have this opportunity for Badger Bound. And so what can we do? What's the roadblocks there? And some of it is, right, their families don't have anything, have never had any.
And what happens to those kids that aren't dual credit, that they come to Amarillo College? I mean, what is their success? Where are they going? Are these the ones that get out of Amarillo College and never do anything, or?
Good point.
That's what I'm worried
Is
about.
Caprock still taking the University of Texas dual credit? I think that they were heavily invested in it and were anti-Amarillo College at one time. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, that's one of the, I'm working on getting out there. DJ and I are working, because I want to get out there to Caprock and tour and see and learn more, just because that's just that's a really interesting anomaly.
Yeah.
What's the new principal this year from last year?
Tammy, an old new one.
An old new one.
And we're looking too for when because I know, you guys have, that your typical college student, right, which is Maria, that you talked about before. And part of the other piece of Badger Bound is typically the students that take our dual credit are not Marias, right? They're the ones whose parents, they know about college, they know about that. So part of this work too, and especially getting into the elementary and middle, is to catch those Maria students in high school or younger, so that they take the dual credit and then they're even more prepared when they, and more comfortable in knowing that they're going to be successful.
Can we create a, for lack of a better term, a scorecard, a one-page scorecard for the Badger Bound that to me is, I assume, or I know we have projected conversion rates from dual credit, high school to Amarillo College. And I would like to see what we projected versus what actually happens. And then I think we also have projected how many of those students actually complete. And I'd like to see a actual to projection of those. I think that would,
let's write it down, Colin's line.
that would really help us know what really is happening. I know we created a model based on assumptions, and that would show us what really is happening. It then could get to some of your point about what's keeping these people from really moving to Amarillo College. That may mean we've got to create more exposure to college, you know, like what we're talking about here. And then the same thing, once we get them here, we have to get them to complete or the model doesn't work. And then we've got to figure out what it takes to get them through completion. And maybe that's, I know we've got strategies that we think will work, but we just need to be able to monitor those. And so I'm trying to think in my mind, I think we can create some better, you've already started some financial reporting that I think is great, and I think we'll just need to continue building that. Maybe with some longer trend lines, perhaps, that will help us have a better sense, you know, more than just a few months, but maybe for a couple of years or something that can kind of really show us, are we moving up or are we moving down in all the areas that are important, you know, revenue, expense, cash, those, anyway, I don't want to get too detailed, but the point is I think we can create a overall reporting system that will improve the board's clarity around what's really going on within the college, but not take tons of time.
Exactly.
We can look at a trend line and we don't have to spend, you know, 20 minutes on a report. Yeah, and we can see, you know, is cash where, is it improving or is it getting worse? And, you know, if it's improving and we know things are moving in the right direction, we don't need to spend a lot of time going through the reporting on it.
Well, I'll go back to we have 5-year budget projections.
Okay. So anyway, I throw that out to just say, I think that would help us as we talk about how do we strategically improve our board meetings and discussions. I think that would help. That's just those are my ideas.
I want to go back to the Camp Rock point, and I think I emailed you both about this concern with Badger Bound, and I was glad to see that we are doing so well in it, because I know if they're doing the ET thing, it's a lot less work for the teacher, because they score it, they report it, they do all that input, and I know that was a stronghold at Camp Rock. So that's
That'll be interesting. Okay, I'll definitely look at
So
that.
do you remember, we were in Austin, and I can't remember who was talking about it, but with the high school students, using the transport, the government pays for the transport of the high school students to college. And if we can have more on-campus days for those students in high school, for their class or for, you know, whatever, for them to come, and maybe it's coordinated with other schools coming at the same time, not a career days type thing, but as part of their classes, if we could get, you know, use the government money from high schools to get the transport with the buses over here, then they start seeing themselves being here and seeing students from other other high schools being here together. And maybe on a day that we have a volleyball game that they could attend and, you know, or baseball, whatever, but get them engaged on campus. You know, student government has, that's where they could take some leadership role in welcoming the students and that type of thing, but just incorporating them while they're still in high school so that they can see themselves being here ahead of time.
Well, that's what I used to take students to WT for just standard WT. It was pretty much a day that we'd take them, and then all of these from the different community colleges would all be there together. It was they have a great plan on how to gather them in. And then they had a transfer day after that, which got them enrolled.
And those are good. What I'm thinking though is the classes that they're actually taking.
The dual credit
The dual
classes,
credit
that's part of
classes,
that.
and incorporating that with the dual credit classes, so that it's not, and those are great. I remember, like I said, career days. I remember coming to Amarillo College for career days, and for Canadian. But extending that to incorporate with their dual credit, that they could be on campus for maybe it's one day in the semester. But even if it's that, at least they're on campus and getting transported using, like I said, using the government dollar from the high school's buses, because they had said that that's something that's done.
Okay.
Then, again, getting them with the idea of coming to class here, I don't know, that may be spaghetti on the wall.
I wrote it down now, so definitely.
Transition.
Yeah.
The next one is goals and metrics. So what I put there was that, you know, right now, we're currently in the strategic planning process, developing our new overall goals. The next steps will be the board to approve the new strategic goals. And then based on that, then we can create what these scorecards or dashboards look like for what do we want to see to track, what metrics do we want to be tracking on those, to have those up. And the opportunity or barrier is that the new strategic goals and metrics will align and focus the work of the college across the institution, so all the way from the Board of Regents, all the way through the institution. That's what I put for that one. Any other feedback on that?
Do you anticipate barriers there?
Trying to think, because I mean, to me, it seems like it's gonna be fun and exciting, right? We're gonna have our new goals and then being able to say, hey, this is how we're gonna be able to track and watch how we're doing, do a report out on that. So, I mean, there'll be a little bit of a challenge getting that put together, but I think it's gonna be great.
Well, will there be any areas, groups that don't want to see their performance?
So, that could be some, that could be, you know, as far as the culture, people getting, because I've been saying it when I've been talking to the teams about the strategic goals, but getting them comfortable with being willing to try and put themselves out there and knowing that that's not necessarily a failure, right? We're gonna learn from it to move forward, and some of that's gonna be take a little bit of action, right? That happening, and then everyone feeling like, yes, I'm excited to do this work. Oh, it didn't happen like we thought, but we learned from it. We're gonna pivot, and that's okay. And that still is gonna make us
Good to great will probably help that, they understand that. You're gonna have failure when you do that. And then there's that flywheel thing where you have the energy is stored and go forward. You're gonna have some moments of failure, and that's okay. Sometimes that should be celebrated.
And I think that that's the more that we normalize that, meaning that that's something we're very open with you all about when we have our meetings and are talking about where we're headed, then that then rolls back into the culture too, where the college family, they can be excited and want to be innovative because then they know, like, hey, we're all in this together and everyone's supportive of the work we're doing.
And there is a social component, social services component monograph on Good to Great that covers more education.
Oh, yes, that side.
Yeah.
That's right, we were talking about that the other day.
I think that the fact that you have checked with all these different entities, you know, from staff to the public to the board, all the different places that you have been, and the students, that there'll be a lot more on board with the final than maybe there has been in the past. And I think a lot of my feeling was strategic plan was just a joke. It was something that you put up there and, you know, had fill in the space on the website or something like that. And I don't think many people really knew what was going on, and they really didn't know where they were headed. So I think you've made some good changes, or I don't even know if it's changes, I just noticed that I thought it was very important to even bring in the public. I think that's awesome. I don't know that they've really been involved before much.
Well, and, you know, if, again, moving from what's been a culture of fear to culture of celebration, then it's like you said, Jay, we're gonna have some failures, and we can celebrate that and say, okay, great, we figured that, we found out what won't work, you know, what can we do with it? And celebrate those things, so that the buy-in counts, you know, they feel like they're moving towards something, and hey, when we hit that, let's celebrate, let's have a reason to show excitement and not looking for what you did wrong, but for what you did right. And I think that will move it forward, and because you already involved everyone, I think it's great that you've done that.
Okay. We can move forward on policies and budgets. What I put there, the 26-27 budget is being built, kind of like we just talked about earlier, to align to our student success reforms and our priorities. The next steps, the budget presentation to the board will include strategic decision mades and explaining to you how they're aligning with our priorities and our reforms. And again, it's a little tricky this year because those goals are going to be coming in and we're already developing our budget, but we kind of know high level, you know, where we're headed. And then the opportunities or barriers, I think this is going to be a really great step forward. It's going to be the first time, and we didn't do a zero-based budgeting where we could capture like every dollar and which goal it's going to. But it's a great first time approach, and then we can continue improving on it. So I think that's going to be that little bit of a barrier or a challenge, is that we're doing it at the same time, but I think you're going to see progress this year, and then you'll see even more in the coming years. And then I had struggled with this one a little bit on the policy, but then, and when Aspen was talking about like resolutions, because to be honest, and hope you can close your ears, right, when you talk about, oh, well, the board could create a resolution, to me that just sounds like words. I'm like, but that's not actionable, like what is that? But then Johnny, when you were talking about, you know, us trying to, you know, working on coming up and defining and clarifying what does student success mean to us, that then popped into my head that for this policy and budgets, that could be really meaningful type of resolution where we come out as a board and an institution to say, this is what this means to us. So that could be another possible one.
Are there actual reform policies we need to put in place? Like, you know, our interactions with the ISDs, or, I don't know, you know, things that would really move us forward in a way that, you know, keeps it going past our time. That this is something we expect college to keep doing forever.
Exactly. Yep.
Foundation. Yeah.
Anything else on that one? Okay, and then the CEO board relationship, what I put on that one, CEO intentionally working to include student success reform updates into the board meetings to track and receive feedback and support from the board in scaling and sustaining the work that we're going to be doing. Next steps is, and I talked about this a little bit, I'm working with Cabinet to structure the focus of our work on reforms, and then what will be our strategic goals, that with leadership development for managers and directors, and that as it's developed, then we'll be able to bring this model to you all to be able to really explain, because part of too with Good to Great is what it talks about, your greatest assets, people.
And so that's when you talk about talent development and talent management, that's how we become great, is that every person in the organization knows that connection and they feel valued. And part of that too is then, who do we bring on board, right? What type of person do we want to bring on board to do that? So the next retreat that the cabinet's going to be having is going to be talking about what those core competencies are. What do we want to say are these big things that we're looking for with people that we bring on to the institution that's going to help drive us to reach our goals. And so then the opportunity or barrier, this alignment of focus, reporting, the structure of our work, and internal professional development will position the college in scaling and sustaining success reforms and meeting our strategic goals.
Say that again, because I was writing it down.
This alignment of focus, reporting, structure of our work, and internal professional development will position the college in scaling and sustaining success reforms and meeting our strategic goals. But I think I see myself as very fortunate. I think, and again, hope you can close your ears a little bit, but from what I've seen, you all have been the most involved in this. I think that other colleges have had some board members here and there, but by and large, for all of you to take the time to not even just, scan in from your house and log in, but be willing to be here together to talk about this, I think is very meaningful. And I appreciate all that you guys have been willing to put into this, because it's really helpful to me, all this feedback as I'm coming through my first year and we're teaming up with strategic goals to really kind of get aligned and make sure that I'm providing you all what you want so we can work closely together to meet the community and college needs. Thank you.
Can I ask about three things that just came to mind while we were talking that I think affect the strategic plan? One is, how are we planning to use AI to improve student success? And that can be either our internal efficiencies to helping the students and how they use AI in their future careers. So I'm curious, and I think we need to have some, I just feel like it's such an important part of the world today that if we're not intentional around that issue, I think we'd be missing something. Another is, where do we stand with online courses? And I know we were really pushing for that back during COVID and everything else, and it just seems like, this is Johnny's perception, which is probably wrong, but it just seems like it's just kind of died.
Okay.
And that may be totally wrong. We may have expanded and continued to grow it, but it may be moving backwards. I don't know.
Okay.
So I'm curious, and I'm curious if we see that as a strategy. And I heard you mention earlier, there is a hesitancy to compete with people outside our service area. And I'm not sure, well, I think it's worthy of a discussion, is should we be? Should we be hesitant of competition? Or should we welcome it and maybe?
We certainly know there will be others that are not hesitant.
Absolutely, we know. We've had competition with, even dual credit from UT and other places, and I just think it's something we just shouldn't I don't think we should just totally ignore WT. So that's it.
Yeah, but I think at the state level, we have barriers that we can't cross with our service areas that it's.
They're very loose these days.
And we try to, and that's really, we try to, like with what I explained with dual credit, we try to be good neighbors, right? But at the same time, if the ISDs are coming to us, we're figuring out how do we serve them. And like with WT, I know I've heard from a couple of other college presidents with them offering dual credit programs where they say, well, and there was a conversation at the state level around it of, considering poaching. Well, why are these universities are coming after our dual credit? And this is hurting us because they're taking this many students. But that's where I look at it. It's all about the product, and organically, if you've got the better product, people are going to come to you. So my response back was, I'm not worried about what WT is doing. We put together a Badger Bound model, and that's getting us leaps and bounds because it's a really good product. And so we're up because the students see the value. Where we have people, just like you mentioned, there are some ISDs and certain people in specific high schools that aren't interested in driving our dual credit because they like AP or they like some of these other things. But because of the way we design Badger Bound, the parents want it. And so then the parents then look to the high school to say, why aren't you giving this opportunity to my child? And we're working through all of those. So there's just a few, but I think that that is a good discussion to have, especially too if we're thinking about, right, if we're talking about bachelor programs, right? We're actually gonna start, right? We're gonna throw ourselves into the ring of competing in that at some point if we do that. And so,
Yeah, that was the other thing is the four-year opportunity. Are we considering and looking at that? And
yes.
Where does that fit within the whole thing?
What was really exciting, that was one of those where, without prompting, and even from students, without me even mentioning it, and I've had faculty and staff mention, that's been this overarching, people are coming at me with these ideas and bringing that up, because they said, we love AC, we have excellent faculty here that actually care, you provide all of these supports and services. Many of us, you might think WT's 30 minutes down the road, but I'm a single mom that has kids I need to get to and from school. We would love if we could stay with you to complete our bachelor's degree. So that is something Frank's been doing great kind of behind the scenes work, working on some white papers of looking at, if we were to start, what might be the programs to start with? What would this look like? How could we start to move forward? Teeing that up for, you know, if we look to move in that direction. So we're doing some of that behind the scenes, but it was really interesting and encouraging to hear. And that's something too that at the college family level, when you think about having a strategic plan and goals that get people excited about what they're doing and while they're here, everyone gets really excited about that idea.
What are some of our big barriers to that?
Pardon me? WT. I mean, I think the politics for us especially is what, and that's where I talk about timing, is really looking at, you know, the when and the timing of it. But that's where what I've kind of challenged Frank on, is I said, especially because I think in Texas, I think we can have, is it 4 or 5? There's only so many, we're limited for how many bachelor programs that a community college can offer. But I said, out of the gate, if we find a program that the local universities can't meet the need for that workforce demand, then that's a great one to first move with. Because then we're saying, we're not trying to take anything necessarily away, but they're not meeting the demand and we can come in and meet that. And that could be a great step forward.
I had written down niche. You know, what's our niche that we can fill?
What isn't being offered somewhere else?
Right.
That's another way.
And that can be our specialty, that then we can service other service areas with that. You know, because sometimes it's better to be good at just a few things than pretty good at a lot, and especially in this situation. And like you said, keeping the peace without, you know, but still being competitive. And if we have those niche programs that others aren't offering in a way that we can service our students that, like you said, are single parents or whatever, can't drive to WT, can't go, and they feel comfortable here, then I think that's the thing that we need to look for, is what's that niche.
And then the other side of it is because, you know, at least right now with Texas, it's not like we would, even if we wanted to, could offer a massive amount of bachelor programs. But then that's where we've got the one we're just getting ready to start and pilot with Texas Tech, where, because I went and met with the president in Lubbock and said, you know, would you be willing to have a class taught here? So students that are in their last semester finishing up with us at the same time could take a class with Texas Tech here on our campus. That's gonna get them more comfortable that they can be successful at Texas Tech. It gets them started so that they won't just finish with our degree, but would move on. And he was definitely open to it. So we worked with, we've got a couple of different programs, but the one right out of the gate that was really interested in working with us on it was engineering. And so that's the one we're gonna, and so too, we have opportunities there that maybe they won't all be our bachelor programs, but if the students know they can stay right here and still come to the AC campus? And then how do we work to still support those students? And what would those MOUs look like with those schools so that we're still supporting them in some way like they're used to? So that's another kind of model that's kind of organically coming together that we're
And
looking
that
at.
works well because Edie was telling me that there's businesses that are wanting our students as interns, our engineering students. And so that's one of those niche areas. Because if they're already appreciating what we're doing here with our engineering students, if they're wanting them as interns, as just, you know, coming from AC, then that's an excellent way to build a relationship with the college for the bachelor's degree.
Where you have the 2+1 program, right? That's not a bachelor's program for us, it's for tech, right? So, but they're still getting it through tech, but on our campus.
Okay, so in like
Education.
Yeah, education.
Education, they get 2 years education here, and then 1 year, and it's a full year, and they do apprenticeships at Amarillo ISD, then they get the 4-year degree, with typical 4-year degree. They get it done in 3 years, because there's such a dearth of educators coming out of college these days. And I will tell you, there's only like 15 in that program. And that could be really important to help us help the region with their
especially the rural
educators.
areas for their area.
Yeah, I mean, WT used to have 200 or so coming out, and now they're down to like fewer than 50 every year. And a lot of those are, I love band and choir, but a lot of those are band and choir folks. So.
Okay, so we've got just a couple minutes for the second piece, which is, and then we can bring us back at 1:50. So this one is just, so what they want us to do, and again, this would be something that I would be submitting, but by October 1st, they want us to submit what they're calling a change artifact that would demonstrate how we've been kind of implementing and adopting some of these things that we've been talking about that we want to move forward with. And so the options are, we could, and there's a few that I think we could almost even do a combination of, but want your feedback on what you think would be good. One would be if we just provide them with a list of our priority student success metrics that we're monitoring. So once we have our strategic goals, we come up with the scoreboard, scorecard or the dashboard of what we're going to be tracking. We can provide that to them. Another would be a revised board meeting agenda. So as we're continuing to kind of get the board agenda like we want it. They also said we could do a new or revised student success policy that you all have approved and submit that. We could give a revised logic model with 1 or 2 paragraph summary of its components, or we could just do a 1-page narrative summary encompassing kind of all the changes and things that maybe we're looking at doing. So I was kind of thinking either the list of list of our metrics that we're going to be monitoring, or a revised board meeting agenda, or a 1-page narrative summary of changes that would be all encompassing. I was kind of thinking maybe one of those 3 might be good.
I like the 1-page narrative summary. You can include it all in there.
Well, I think the scorecard could be one of them.
Can we include 2?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Both, right?
Throw it into AI and let AI generate.
Well, and can we
Make sure
generate
it's
a
seriously.
foreign policy around there?
Let's treat it an A++.
Okay, I like it. So that's what I can work on after this. We have is it this week? I think it's next week. They're bringing the presidents together on a virtual call just to kind of do a debrief to get our feedback on kind of this whole process. And so they'll probably talk a little bit about this with us then, but then otherwise they're just gonna move back to October 1 to submit that, so.
October 1 for the artifact?
Yep, that's the deadline that they've given us. So is anything, any other ideas or thoughts? I mean, we got about 5 minutes before they move us back in.
I had a couple of questions about the UTPB. What are we obligated to concerning that?
In 5 minutes.
Well, we've worked with them on the pathway so that if the students take these specific courses, then they're able to transfer over. And so, not only, right, teaching the courses in the curriculum, like we
Hi,
talked
Hope. Hi,
about.
Amarillo College.
Okay.
I'm
Okay,
so sorry if I am disrupting anything, but I wanted to make myself available to you if you needed me to read any scripting for public comment.
No,
Nope.
Nope, no public comment needed?
no.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Just wanted to offer. We'll be back in the main room in about 3 minutes. Thank you.
And so then then the other piece, right, would be for our coaches and our advisors to be advising our students so that they know, make sure that they know, they understand that pathway. And then also supporting them as they're working to transfer. And then it was great when they announced that day that they're given the $1,000 scholarship for our students to come, which is awesome.
But is it part of the option there for the students to stay here and do some of the courses online?
Yes,
For the-
yes, because they do, they offer them online so the students could stay here and not have to actually be there to finish out their bachelor's.
So how do we overlay that with the other bachelor or 4 years? I mean, are we creating multiple pathways here that are redundant?
I don't think they would be redundant. I think, because I think, and maybe as we get further along in transfer, we find the models that really work, right? And kind of work to align more of our MOUs with the different universities to be like that. But right now, a lot of it is, sometimes they kind of have a model that they want to work with us on, and wherever we can create a pathway with the university for a student that might want to go there, we want to do it. But I think it's a really good point that, that tends to be like, hey, let's talk about how we can do this, and they each kind of look a little different. That then as we're getting our hands wet in more and more of these to say, hey, we know that this leads to more success for our students if we have an agreement that works this way in this model, and then we can and then we start to morph those more standard into that. That's a good point.
We did have an agreement when we built the STEM Center with that grant with Texas Tech.
Yeah. And then
to do the same thing, and it just
Never happened.
never happened.
Never happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've got the STEM Center, but.
I'm so scared.
Yeah, we have, I know Frank's been circling back, and trying to work with them on that, but what gets tricky with those is that you have to have their faculty, right? So you have to find time for their faculty to get with our faculty and get comfortable with our curriculum to be able to do that. And I think that was where part of it was that they didn't feel like they had the time, the capacity to do that. And I know I've talked to a couple of different specific programs in different universities, and that's a little bit of the feedback. It's not necessarily that they don't want to, because as we're trying to get guaranteed transfer, right? If you finish with this GPA, you take these classes, they will all transfer, and you'll be able to go then and complete. But then you have the schools that will then say, well, no, we want you to retake our version, and it takes the faculty though on both sides to spend the time doing
So how
that.
do you facilitate that collaboration?
It's just building the relationships. And then what you do is you find one program, right? One group of faculty at that school that's interested and will take the time. And then that's successful, then the other programs that start to want it, and then they're willing to dedicate the time.
You say take the time, is this
Welcome
one-on-one
back,
personal meetings?
everyone.
Yeah.
Welcome back as people rejoin the session. We're so glad to see all of you. We're waiting on a few more folks to rejoin. And it looks like everyone is coming back. Welcome back, everyone. We're so glad to see you again as we close out our session this afternoon. So I will be very brief and then hand it over to Josh to formally close us out. But one thing we ask that you do is complete a very short 3-minute session survey. So the link to this survey will be in the chat. For those of you that are at your computer and can complete the survey now, we encourage you to do so. It's no more than 7 questions, many of them multiple choice. For those of you that are in a conference room, we understand you may not be able to do it at this time, but we will be sending the survey in a follow-up email, and we would appreciate if you would take the 3 minutes later to complete the survey. We take your feedback very seriously, and we use it to continuously improve this curriculum and the participant experience. Looking ahead, next steps, this is your final session with us. However, it is not necessarily the last touch point. We want to stay in touch with you and to continue to support you and your trustees in this work. So we will be reaching out for feedback that will inform future programming. And we will also be reaching out to check in on those change artifacts, which we know you discussed as teams with your facilitators and your CEOs. Those are not due until October 1st of this year, but we will be reaching out with updates and reminders and feedback from your facilitators between now and that point in time. As always, you can contact us anytime at our cep.boardleadership email address, and we will get back to you immediately. And with that, I will hand it over to Josh to formally close us out. Josh, over to you.
Well, thank you. First, join me in thanking Leanne and Yvette and the whole Aspen team for all of their terrific work on this fellowship. You all know that behind the scenes, there are so many people who are working so hard on these kinds of engagements, both the in-person one we had and this. And also, please join me in thanking, I'm not sure they're here with us, but the Texas Student Success Center at TAC, Kim and team were terrific partners in doing this work. And then last but not least, your facilitators, Mary, Maria, Brenda, Hope, and Pascal. I know they join me in thanking you for your engagement. It's really a labor of love for us to be able to work with you and know that our work can contribute to the work that you're doing. You're the ones who have to really lead the work on the ground, and it's a joy for us to be able to work with you. Pascal also as my co-facilitator and co-faculty member. I feel like we're, the team teaching. Thank you, Pascal, for that. So let me just close out by reminding us of why we're doing the work and how all of this relates. Right? The idea is students come to us because they want good jobs and they want a better life. And the community invests in us, employers and the legislature and taxpayers, because they're looking for talent. They're looking for talent to be developed so that we can fuel our economy and make sure we actually have plumbers and doctors and others to provide the services we need and the products that we need in our community. And so the work you're doing, I was really gratified by the group I was working with, Houston Community College, ended the day diving into the metrics again and looking at these post-graduation metrics and asking the question, not how many students do we have enrolled and how many are graduating alone, but how many actually transfer and get bachelor's degrees, because we know there are good jobs in those fields. How many are actually having decent wages, and in what fields? They were talking about the specific fields they wanted to focus on. And so just as you move forward, just keep those ideas in mind. So that's just one reflection, is please keep in mind why students come to us, not to enroll, but for a better life, and how you're going to align your work together to ensure that that happens for all the students in your community, including those who are furthest from opportunity. And then the second thing I would just say is that this work is not one and done. We've really enjoyed working with all of you, but if you're anything like the Houston group, we actually cut off their conversation at the end to come back to the central meeting. But that's because they understand, as I'm sure all of you do, that you have to attend to this. You're going to have more conversations with the full board. I know there was a subset of the board that participated for this to last, and you've got to attend to it. If you stop the work this year and don't keep revisiting at least annually these questions about how are we going to organize ourselves to do the work so that we together can partner to move forward, it will be really easy to backslide into behavior that you've identified, that you want to change, things that you want to get better. That's going to require, just as any relationship does, constant and regular attendance. So I'd encourage you to do that. As Leanne said, Please stay in touch. If there are any examples or refreshers or anything you need moving forward, I have a little list from Houston about things they want to see in the field. Please be in touch. We have the privilege of going around to great colleges around the country, seeing what works and bringing it to others. If you don't ask us for that stuff, our work is for naught. So please be in touch. Let us know if you need anything else. Thank you for your partnership, and I look forward to continuing to work with many of you in the months and years to come. Take care.
Have a great day, everyone. Facilitators, if you would like to remain on the line with me, you're welcome to do so. But participants, you're free to go.
Another agenda item on the board meeting today, item number 4 for adjournment. Anybody want to adjourn? So moved. Second. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? You're sticking around. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.